Should I start?
Why don't we start? Great. I think Janet is about to join us. So,
So Moni, do you have the minutes tonight?
Say it again.
Are you going to do the minutes tonight?
I can do. No problem.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
great. So, why don't we start the meeting? So, just going to do roll. Cam,
Present.
Marty,
Present.
Nina,
Present.
Mish,
Present.
Kevin,
Present?
Simone,
Present.
and I'm here. So great. Before we start with Barry, why don't we just quickly do the minutes from last week? I just
Janet just sent some notes on corrections.
great.
I did not receive, probably because my email is not active yet.
Yeah, I'll forward him to you.
Yep.
Yeah, I have not tried to set up my Dover email address yet, but it's all work. It's pretty straightforward once I click around.
Yeah,
Well,
the password.
maybe Mish, you and Nina both succeeded, correct?
Found it easiest to go to google.com and go from there.
Yeah, I just added it in like to my other Gmail addresses.
I'm sorry, gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could do it from Google too, but if you have other Gmail addresses, you just add another account, create that as another account. And then it's right there. And then you just have to use the link to get to the drive that Woody sent. And then you have access to the drive too, which is really helpful. There's lots of stuff in there.
Yeah, I try everything and it didn't work. Like they keep saying that the password was wrong.
I was getting that too, but it just hadn't been then all of a sudden it worked. I think because he said it would take, it was like, I realized he said it would take a day or two. And then all of a sudden I did the same thing. It just went in. So try, you're using the right address, your full address.
Oh yeah, no, I try on my computer, on my phone, different browsers.
Yeah.
All gave me the same.
Weird.
If
Do
you
you have a
continue to
Gmail
have problems, it might be worthwhile giving Chris Costello a call, and he should be able to walk you through it.
Yeah, I was going to say Chris may be more help than Michael.
Okay.
He seems to be the technology resource at the townhouse.
I'll do that.
All right, great. So, Simone, I just sent you Janet's email.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies.
Hi, Janet. No problem.
I called into Cam's next week's webinar.
Any other comments, corrections about last week's minutes? And everybody should have gotten Janet's corrections. Any, if no other comments, does someone want to move that we?
I'll move for approval, including the amendments that Janet suggested.
Good. Can I get a second?
Yeah, I second that.
Great. All right, Cam,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Mish,
Yep. I should have noticed that I was absent at the last meeting, and I don't know if that matters, but I wasn't there.
Yep. Nina,
Yes, I approve.
Janet, Janet, are you voting to approve?
Yes. Sorry.
Simone
Yes.
and Kevin.
Yes.
All right, great. So the major order, piece of business tonight is capital budget, and Barry has been kind enough to attend on this stormy evening. So I'm not sure how many years have you been chair of the capital budget committee, Barry?
6 years and aging quickly.
He's
No
an amazing,
faster than any of the rest of us, Barry.
he's an amazing town resource. He can provide a fair amount of kind of experience as well as perspective on the capital budget. And this year in particular, capital budget is going to be an issue because the requests are substantial. So Barry, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and people should
Okay.
feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, please feel free to interrupt at any time. And I'm going to try to share my screen. Oh. Just coming up with desktop. Let's see. Maybe if I click on that, does that do anything? No.
Barry, along the bottom, there's that green button, share.
Right. I
And-
clicked on that.
And if you open if the document's open on your desktop, you should be able to see that after you hit share. And
Okay.
then click on that.
So
Yeah, I think the document has to be open.
somewhere the documents are supposed to be, I should be able to click on it. Okay, here we go. Hmm.
The theme tonight is technology makes your life easier.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time that I've done this on the new Zoom. Making me type something in here. Well, that's not it.
You could also send it to me or to Cam or Marty, and we could.
Okay, yeah, I think that's as a fail-safe, I think that's better. And let me see if I can do that.
Does everybody have sharing ability, or do you have to
Yeah, I was
make
wondering
them
that.
host?
I can give everyone sharing ability, which I believe
Or
I
make them co-host?
I don't need to do that. I think I just have to share.
Let's see. I can see the file, but nobody, I take it that nobody else can.
Not yet, no.
Okay. Let's see.
Barry, do you use a Mac or a PC?
A Mac.
So if you click on the share button,
Yeah, I did that.
you will see everything that is open on your computer. Then you just select the document that you want to share and click on the blue button saying share.
Well, let me try that again then. Yeah, I can see the file. This is too bad.
You can or cannot.
Yeah, I can't open it. Yeah. Yeah, I can open the file on my computer.
No, just click on the file. It will be highlighted with a blue line around the file that you want to share.
Yeah.
And then it's a blue button on the bottom saying share again.
Okay.
On the
Let me-
same screen that you have all the files.
So have the document open, Barry, and then go to the share button down the bottom of the Zoom screen.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to get back to the Zoom screen. Where is that? Here we go.
Just hold down the Command key and hit Tab, and that'll take you straight to it.
Command key and tab.
Command Tab. And then you should see Zoom there.
I do. Okay. Now, sorry about this. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I've got the file open and I'm hitting share. Does anybody see it?
No.
Yeah.
You hit share and that'll open up another screen, and then you have to click on which folder, which file you want to share.
Let the collaboration begin, it says. Sign in.
Hmm.
Nobody sees it still?
Nope.
Oh, I'm clicking every blue button I can find.
Go slower.
I'm sorry, you can just, you can just email it to somebody or,
I was just gonna say, maybe email it to me or to,
Okay, let me try that. Let's see.
in the meantime too, I was trying to log into or set up my, my Dover Mass account, but I am getting that you have the wrong password. So I don't know.
so I would say talk to Chris, because
Yeah.
Chris may need to reset the password for you and Simone to
Okay.
create your accounts.
Okay, I just sent it to Cam.
Great.
Hopefully that gets there.
So will just, while we're in our little break here, I'll mention that we got my training today on the webinar set up for Zoom. So in next week's meeting will actually be in the webinar format. It shouldn't cause any problems for you. It should be the same, essentially the same as the Zoom workplace, but if somehow you come in and you're not immediately recognized as a member of the panel for the webinar, which should be the members of the warrant committee, then just raise your hand on Zoom and I can tap you in. So otherwise, though, it should recognize. I put in the emails, and most of you should have gotten notification. I think it went to the Dover MA accounts. So Kevin and Simone may not have gotten it yet, but you should have an invitation coming to next week's meeting. Looks good.
Okay. Is that it? Is that it on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. The assets that we look at for the town are in the neighborhood of $150 million. So they include infrastructure, equipment, the fleet, and buildings and building improvements. So what you're looking at on this screen is a 1974 truck that we still have running. It's been actually replaced this year. And when replacing equipment or vehicles, we have developed guidelines. And the items on this page show the kinds of guidelines that we take a look at: the condition and age, cost of repairs and maintenance, depreciation, redundancy. Is there another piece of equipment that can do the job? Projected normal asset life, sustainability and emissions, and potential grants. with respect to most items that are vehicles that are replaceable on an ordinary cycle, we are able, and this has to do with the police department and primarily the DPW. We are able to set forth fairly objective guidelines. So we know when the police department wants to replace their patrol cars. And we have now worked out a schedule to replace the trucks and the heavy vehicles for the DPW.
Barry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
That $150 million that you mentioned as the total, does that represent the original cost or some type of net of depreciation amount or
Well, that's
replacement cost?
I would, and that, by the way, is my estimates looking at insurance policies. And so it's mainly replacement cost. So it includes the school buildings, it includes the townhouse, the protective service building, the library, the new community center, the highway department. So that's an approximation.
Okay. And would there be a schedule that sort of outlines all of those different categories and the elements that ultimately will lead to that total of 150 million?
The town actually keeps only a schedule on the fleet because they have to file that for insurance purposes. Do they keep a fixed asset schedule?
Yeah,
It's sort of. But that would be for accounting purposes. So that's probably on a depreciated asset value or asset basis.
Do they have one of those?
The town usually does not publish a balance sheet, which is surprising to me because we always are guessing at the asset side of the balance sheet.
Well, there is an audited set of financials on the town website that does have a balance sheet, but you can't drill down. It's a line item.
Oh, yeah.
It comes from somewhere, though. It's audited by the outside auditors.
Well, it's probably compressed. I mean, they group all the assets into small categories. I've never seen a detailed balance sheet, but I've been asking for one for a long time. But typically, municipal accountants look at you like you're kind of crazy if you ask for a detailed balance sheet that we use in corporate accounting, of course.
Yeah, and Woody and I went to a session at the beginning of November with the Association of Town Finance Committees where there was a presentation that led me to believe that best practice and pretty common amongst towns is they do have a schedule like that. So maybe Dover just doesn't fall into that category.
We have a current problem in that it's been announced, this is public knowledge, that we have not been certified this year. But there was no reason for it. I guess we're part of 6 or 7 towns that have not been certified. So our accounting firm did not certify the financial statements.
Yeah. Well, you're actually 2 years behind from what I've been able to find out.
Oh, okay. Well, that's even worse.
Yeah, it is.
So I will ask afresh for anything that I can get on the balance sheet. But my information comes mainly from insurance policies and the general costs that we see. So we know what the new building is costing for the community building, which is based upon the debt, 26 million.
Yeah.
We know basically what the schools originally cost. We know what vehicles cost.
So these replacement values are coming primarily from the insurance providers? Is that where that?
Our insurance providers and the idea that we have of of replacement costs. I don't know, I don't think at this point that we have exact costs of building replacement like the schools. If we ever have to replace the schools, and there's no contemplation that we have on the books right now, nobody's asking for that. But let's say in 20 or 30 years, somebody wants to replace schools, then they will cost a lot more than the original cost, obviously, and a lot more than what we're predicting today. So,
Barry, could I ask you to tell me when you want me to change the slides?
oh yes, not yet. In a minute, I will tell you.
Thanks, Barry.
Okay. So the assets are broken down primarily into infrastructure, equipment, the fleet, and buildings, and other improvements.
And Barry, for each of those items then on your list, would it have these same items that are the bullet points on your slide here? Would you be able to look up for a building or a piece of equipment or infrastructure and have all of this information that you have outlined here associated with each of those items?
Well, that's a really good question. We are dependent upon the departments to give us that kind of information. So we ask them in September for the budget that they have for, we're working on FY26 right now for the current year. And then we ask for a 5-year projection. So they will give us, generally, they give us most of these items. So we definitely, at subsequent meetings with them, we definitely ask for all of these items and more, actually, because these items are expanded when we have a project. So if we're doing an infrastructure project that's like the DPW will do, like the stormwater system, then we'll ask for even more. We'll look for the design, we'll look for the plans, we'll want to see architectural reports, we'll want to see feasibility and engineering studies. So we go a level even below these kinds of numbers. So we're looking for the original items that they would use in order to make their decision for requesting their projects. So infrastructure is one that's much more complicated. That covers, for example, Claybrook. We looked at extensive plans, feasibility studies, the engineering designs. They changed quite a bit, so we had to review several renditions. On the buildings, principally the townhouse, which was built in 1921 to 23. We've basically, over the last 5 years, have rebuilt a substantial part of the townhouse, along with the superintendent of buildings, Carl Warnick. And so Carl has shared with us extensive information on the parts of the townhouse that needed to be replaced. We replaced all of the windows, 71 windows that all had to be architecturally designed. They're historically required types of windows. We replaced the roof, which was 100 years old. The townhouse downstairs has been entirely remodeled. And it's, I'd say, probably 70% is now air conditioned. So we continue to talk about, for example, the boilers, the fire systems. So we've done all of those items over the last 5 years. We've done a lot to the protective service building. That's 20 years old. Let me actually, I'll give you an idea of the age of the buildings, because this is one of our problems. They were all aging out, so to speak. So they've all reached the time where they have parts of the buildings that are obsolete or have to be replaced. So the library was built in 1968 and remodeled somewhat in 1995, primarily the interior. We're working on the library HVAC system right now to see what we can do to replace that relatively inexpensively, so we don't have to spend the $1 million or $2 million that the community center has cost us for HVAC. The townhouse was, as I said, 1921 to 23. The highway department was 1998. Protective service building was 1976, and expanded partial renovation in 1998. Whiting is 1903, probably hasn't been changed much. And that's going to undergo, we've already approved $80,000 for Carl Warnick to rehabilitate that facility.
Hey, Barry, can I ask a question? I'm sorry to keep stopping you, but last week we had Dawn Fatua from the school system talking about, she mentioned anyway in passing, the on-site insight group that does capital assessments for the schools. Is there
Right.
any such process on these other assets you're talking about?
Yeah, we've used that. Probably up until there is an on-site insight study for the next I think it's 15 or 20 years for the town buildings. But the problem with on-site insight is it's an approximation, so that doesn't mean something's worn out. So we depend more on the determination by each department, and then we examine that determination specifically.
So when on-site insight does their work, is it just on a specific project, or have they looked at things in totality and come up with a list of sort of the state of affairs and where your priority should be, anything like that?
Yeah, they do it in totality. It's the same study that they did for the school systems. So they'll tell you what the standard life is of an HVAC system. So they'll say 17 years. They'll say a boiler will last. I mean, we had this situation before with the on-site insight study at the schools said that the called for the replacement of the boilers. And so the schools came to us and asked us for $350,000, and then withdrew that, but eventually decided that the boilers would last another 10 years because they had an outside person come and look at it. So on-site insight, we think, is more of an overall approximation of when useful life is reaching its end. So like with the boilers, they thought it was going to last 20 years, it'll probably last 30 years.
Are we able to determine when the boiler was actually installed in the year and what's been done since it was installed?
Oh, yeah. You
Yeah.
mean the one that I'm talking about at the schools?
Yeah, we have those kinds of detailed records. You can actually
yeah.
compare it
Oh,
to
yeah,
the
yeah.
estimate. Yeah,
Yeah, that's something that we have kept.
good.
And we are in the process of replacing the boilers at at the library right now. So we want to try to replace fossil fuel, and we've been working on it very hard over the last couple of years, where we can in town that's efficient and cost effective. So the next building that we see is going to be the library. And that will be hopefully completely electrified over the next, we're now projecting that that will be an FY27 project. We've done a lot on the protective service building. We put in enhanced facility to supplement the boilers. We couldn't take out the boilers right away there because the boilers were used for hot water. So we kept the boiler, but it's running at a reduced level.
Hey, Barry, just a quick question. Are any of the additional slides correlating to kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, they not talking about right now, but I can. You want to go to the next slide? I mean,
Well, I mean,
this is the past 5-year actual.
okay, maybe.
Okay, so this is informative insofar as you can see that the expenditures were considerably less. So they increased from, say, 726,000 all the way up to 4,082,000 for FY24. And FY25 was static at 4,200,000. But it's been increasing every year. And for FY26, we're predicting, I'll show you the slide. Do you want to go to the next one? Okay, this is what we do for, and did for FY25. This is the actual requested columns and approved columns. So we had requests of 4,279,000, and by reductions and subsidies and grants, we reduced that to 1,981,000. So you can see we got substantial amounts from ARPA. ARPA is the American Repair Plan Act, which was a federal program. So we took advantage of that program and we replaced a lot of the assets or supplemented our expenditure on, or reduced our expenditure. You can see that we did the culvert at Willow. We did the 6-wheel dump truck. We insisted that they build the salt shed partially by themselves. The original request was 774,000, and the expenses actually they're very close to the 462,000. So we saved a fair amount there. But this is, if you want to take a look at this, these are the actual requests and expenditures for 2025, for FY25. So we were able to get 4,279,000 for expenditures of 1,981,000. Want to go to the next slide? Okay, these are the grants that we were able to achieve, 24 to 26. Green Communities grant for the community center was 500,000. The library anticipated grant, now we're pushing it back. We think we'll be able to get another grant that will offset that. We got stormwater sewer system and the 6-wheel dump truck for $1,075,000. And the other state grants, we got almost 400,000. So over a 2-year period, we got $2,350,000 of grants. Is there another?
Who writes the grants?
Usually it's the department heads. In some case, on Green Communities, it's been we had a grant writer that worked for the town. He was the planning. He was the acting planning fellow, and he still works for Sherborne. So when we have questions on grants, we can tap him, or there's a new town planner also who's capable of writing grants. So we expect to stay very active in grants as we go forward. Do you have the next page, Carol?
Barry, if I may, it's the two people who have been absolutely phenomenal in grant writing are Kevin and Joe Vinci. And a lot of this ARPA money, we've recently been able to apply to other projects because they're getting grants, not for the whole amount, but if it's a $50,000 project and we get a grant for 10, then we're going to move that 10 around to meet other projects. So
Right.
I just wanted to give them credit where credit is due.
Sure. Well, they have something for the regionalization, and that's still open for the police department. So there's some assets that they have talked about that would be a grant from the state, which will be, they will be able to take some officers off the desk and put them to work doing police work rather than answering the phone, because regionalization will pick up the 911 calls. That's correct, isn't it, Dave?
That's my understanding as well. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that'll be a savings.
And one last question, like, because half the battle with grants is identifying grants or understanding when they're announced, or are they on like listservs? Like who's kind of watching opportunities, so to speak?
Well, that's a good question too. We watch for grants. And I know that specific departments are now very cognizant of grants. Now, this is a new thing just in the last few years. So I think that we're much more active in grant utilization. As Dave said, the police department is now involved in getting grants. That's a first.
In a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars are either just granted or on the way.
Yeah. Huh. All right.
So I think it's a town-wide effort to answer that. There's a lot of people involved, and we continue to, when we communicate with the departments, we continue to remind them that we're looking for grants. So every time they appear before us, we talk about alternative methods of financing, and grants are one of them.
Well, if they want to get their work done, they're going to want to apply for the grants because it's just this new funding source. And it allows them to get done what they want to get done.
Right, exactly.
So Dave, I don't know a whole lot about what the grants are out there for municipalities, but the political landscape seems to indicate that for public safety and criminal justice, there's probably more of a sweet spot at the state and federal level, and for dump trucks and libraries and things of that nature. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
Half the first part, yes. The second part, I'm not sure. But the
road infrastructure is another big one, I think.
Yes, and for instance, there's a second culvert. I'm blanking on the road, but it's getting replaced because Kevin got a grant, and so we moved some ARPA money out of, we canceled the authorization to spend it because now there's a grant to fund it, and moved it over to another project to take care of that.
Right, that's the
So,
Wilsondale culvert.
yes, thank
So
you.
we have 60, this is new, just in the last year. We have over 60 culverts. And very little work has been done on any culverts, probably in the last 50 or even longer years. So we're going to do, DPW is going to do an assessment of expenses for culverts. They estimate, the Wilsondale culvert, they're estimating now at about 500,000. And they're talking about maybe spending several $100,000 a year. We haven't incorporated that into the projections yet, but we'll probably start to put some numbers in, depending on when we do the next set of projections. This is the set that we did in FY25. And so these are the actual expenditures, 1,981,000 for FY25. 26 is actually pretty accurate because the numbers are coming in about the same as you see here for each department. The highway is probably, that's a little low. Fire and ambulance is a little low. But we have requests, we'll probably have requests for approximately $8,500,000, which is going back to the prior 5 years. If you remember in the prior slide, we averaged say $700,000-800,000. So this number for FY26 is 10 times larger than we had for the prior 5 years.
Barry, there's one number there that has substantially been reduced, if I recall, from Dawn's presentation on capital expenditures with the Chickering School. It was only 75,000 as opposed to $1 million that's in the air.
Right, but I figure that at this point that we'll make up for most of that million with the other departments. So you're absolutely correct.
So Barry, the increase over the last decade has been pretty staggering in terms of the amount per year that we're now getting in capital requests, and doesn't feel like inflation is an adequate explanation for this. Do you have a sense of why the capital requests for the town have increased so substantially? We're instead of averaging 750,000 a year 8 or 10 years ago, we're now averaging 4 million a year.
Yeah, the biggest drivers are that the buildings and basic infrastructure are now more than 20 to 25 years old. So that's all coming due at the same time. That's why before, when I read I wanted you to see the dates that the buildings were built.
Yep.
And inflation is a factor. We saw that incredibly on the community center building. I mean, we went from a budget of, $700 a square foot to $2,100 a square foot. That I think we've had some natural disasters that were not necessarily of our making. Claybrook was one, where basically half the street fell into the Charles River because of erosion. We replaced 400 linear feet of the street and the bank of the river. So then we have the culverts, we have waterways, waterway issues, and we have the stormwater system at the at the town garage because we had a flood there. So that has to be entirely rebuilt. And we're working on on that. The budget for the highway department is still showing these kinds of things because they're coming in at around 2,600,000 this year. So they're up from that original projection of 2,070,000. So I think it's a combination of these kinds of things, and they're all happening at once. So
Could I ask Dave a question then? So I guess the question is, how does the town plan for this? Knowing that or the buildings aren't going to get any younger. So if our infrastructure is aging in this way and the effects of climate change are likely to have
yeah,
pretty
well,
people
I
stress
can
on
tell you for corporate purposes, when we work with large corporations and they have aging buildings and aging equipment and production equipment, then we start to institute reserves. And
Yes.
we set up reserves every year and we fund those reserves. And now we have started to do something like that. We have a capital stabilization fund, but it's limited. And the part of that stabilization fund will be used to offset the let's say 8,500,000 estimate. This town was on a cash basis, basically a cash basis accounting. What they needed, they paid for. So they almost never borrowed money except for the schools. And very small amounts were ever borrowed. So they used free cash, they used the tax levy, and now life is changing. So we have instituted a capital stabilization fund, and hopefully we'll start to institute some higher reserves. So we put some more funds aside.
How much do you put in each year, Barry? What's the methodology that you're applying?
Well, on a corporate basis, the methodology I can tell you is typically a percentage of replacement value because you do have to replace it, obviously.
So of that $150 million, what type of factor would you apply to that?
Well, I don't think anybody's going to use that amount to create reserves because that would be far in excess of what our reserves are, what our limited reserves are right now.
Yeah, but you would make the case that you ideally, in an ideal world, you'd want to do it that way. You can't afford to, but you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, right. I think
fact,
that, by the way, I think
were-
that's a Dave question as well. You know, that over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll finish our preliminary budget. We'll then go back to Warrant early in January, and we'll start to explain as we get closer to the actual numbers. And then we'll go to the town administrator and to the BOS, and they will be able to see what we think we have to spend. And from that, they'll arrive at sources of funds. And we, back on one of the pages, we actually list the sources. So instead of just having uses of funds, we now look at the sources of funds because we think that
Barry, if I might
everyone
add on the question of the reserves, a warrant was submitted to a town meeting a couple of years ago to increase the reserves substantially, and I think it was voted down. Is that not correct, Dave?
Yes.
I think, yes, it was voted down. A lot of folks wanted the cash returned. And we went from a position of absolute envy where our free cash was probably a little bit too high. And then it got spent forward on the community center and other areas or items. So I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Barry. One is the rail trail in here. Is that the Park and Rec, 1,700,000.
No. The rail trail has not been booked yet, and Park and Rec is coming before us next on the next meeting on the 17th, I think it is.
Well, this is, and then is the Center Street Bridge replacement, because that is my understanding penciled in for FY29.
Yeah, we haven't booked anything because we've been told that outside funds, state funds will be used for that. So we haven't booked anything for the Center Street.
And
Dave, the
unless
other
we
thing-
fail the MBTA Community Zoning Act, at which point those funds are very much in jeopardy. But right now, my understanding is we have, I think it's $17.5 million earmarked. So that's
Dave, the other thing to remember is that this is a 5-year projection that was conducted last year. So it's not really reflecting current budget proposals.
fair enough. And I can totally appreciate that. And Barry just lives with a moving target because this changes every day in 12 places. And but there's something for everyone here to consider. And I am just thinking out loud as an individual, but we might have to take a lot of these 20-year plus assets and group them together and issue a bond. Because correct me if I'm wrong, if we take a normal increase in the operating budget for the next couple of years, and then we try to throw 8.5 million on top of it, we're going to exceed our levy limit, which means we're into Prop 2.5 override unless we do a bond issue and exempt it.
Right, right. Yeah, I think we're in a transition period where we're going from pay as you go kind of thing on a cash basis to basically a more accrual basis of accounting, where we actually issue bonds on a long-term basis. So I think we're in not only are we in a transition period for the aging of assets, but we're also in a transition period for how we generate sources of funds.
I have a
So
question.
a lot is happening at this point.
I'm wondering about the water infrastructure. Would that come under any of these capital expenses? And my understanding is Dover's going to have a water problem unless we look for other sources, which would seem to me to be a big expense. Does that come in anywhere?
It's actually going the opposite way, Nina. We're trying to negotiate with Aquarian to have them buy the remaining pipes that Dover owns, because what we're actually doing is selling a liability. The cash value is paltry. It's in the tens of thousands of dollars. But every time there's a water main break, we're spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix it. And the pipes are old. They're well beyond their normal useful life. This is all according to Aquarian. But that's what we're looking to do right now, is just literally sell away the liability, and that would take care of the underground pipes. Were you referring to anything in addition to that?
Also, I'm curious about water supply, because I thought we were in a situation where the water table was getting lower every year, and that Dover might need to look for other sources of water besides for the aquifers we currently have. So I would think that might be a pretty expensive undertaking. So I was just wondering about that too.
Aquarian is looking at different hookup options, including MWRA, but that's going to come with a whole lot of, I'm going to say, restriction. And we don't want Aquarian to say, great, we have MWRA, we can put a water pipe down every road in town and development explodes. So it's literally a double-edged sword. And then the other issue is the Ponzi family left us a large parcel with a specific bequest to meet the town's water needs. So we do have another area that we could drill a well and see if it holds.
Interesting.
But yeah, so the water discussion is ongoing and it's multifaceted.
Who's Aquarian, or what is Aquarian?
The Dover Water Company has been bought and sold at least twice, and they're the current owner of the system that serves about a third of the town.
Okay. But why, and so why would they want to buy such a crappy asset as you described it?
They're in that business. The town of Dover is not. I mean, for them to replace something, they're going to have a crew ready to go. They're going to have the pipe and valve or whatever is busted in a storage yard, and they're going to come over and fix it.
I see.
Whereas, we're going to have to get bids, go out. I mean, imagine, and then it's water infrastructure. We don't want it to not work.
Right. Okay.
Right, and maybe they will address the pressure and water pressure in the center of town, because that's been sorely lacking. And when you build a building, you have to provide for fire protection, and you have to have a certain amount of water. So I don't remember the exact size of the tanks, but there's two very large tanks that are supplementing the water pressure at the community center.
It certainly is a water source. They're supposed to be pretty much the size of an Olympic pool, and there's two of them.
Yeah.
So
they're at least 50,000 gallons apiece, I think.
well, I was at the building committee a couple of nights ago, and the topic came up, and I asked them, when is the water tanks, when are they going to get filled? And our building representative had absolutely no idea. And I said, well, please do it, because when we built the Chickering School, they filled up the tanks. Everything was great. And 2 days before school started, Dave Tiberi went over and dropped the stick into the tanks, and it came up bone dry. Why? Because the tanks leaked. So and school was supposed to start in 2 days, and he allowed us to hook up one of those 18-wheeler sized water trucks for pools to give a water source on a temporary basis. But yes, water is a trouble spot in town.
And in fact, Dawn's presentation to the Capital Budget Committee yesterday referred to challenges in water reliability at Chickering.
Right, right. There's a lack of pressure at Chickering. So Chickering must be fed by that same pipe that comes, that services the town center.
I actually don't know, Barry. That's into, and I used to be on the school committee, but I don't know where the pipe feeding it is.
I'll tell you who's the expert in that is Carl Warnick. He knows every inch of every pipe.
And
Yeah.
Barry, where's the underlying line items that builds to all these top level numbers?
We will be issuing that as sub Excel spreadsheets for each one. So that'll come in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So we'll have that detail will be available. And you'll be able to see what we're recommending and going forward. So I think we have a meeting. We have a meeting coming up January 7th for that'll work on the highway department. So the highway department by itself is $2,600,000. So we'll be working with them to see what we can do to reduce some of that or spread it out over a period of time. As you can see, they have substantial expenses in FY27 and 28. So, and we also at the same time have the fire department coming in, and you can see that's $1,300,000 every other year approximately to replace. That's a 10-year replacement of almost all the fire trucks. So their trucks are 20 plus years old. We replaced a truck in I think it was FY24, we approved 990,000 for a truck that was 34 years old. So we've already started in the replacement procedure with them. Does anybody else have any questions on the 5-year projections?
No, I would just, can you go back one slide though? The only thing I would say is it does, I mean, again, there's not a lot of underlying detail here, but it
Sure.
does,
Grant utilization or the one before that?
no, well, the one that was showing the last 5 years, I think,
Oh,
where
yeah, that's
there,
one more back, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's approximately 8,600,000 over that 5-year period. Now we're up to 19 million and climbing.
it does seem, I don't know. Does seem like a lot. I mean, I guess, but it's not gonna, will it level out then? I mean, we're just in a period where a whole bunch of stuff needs to be replaced, but then is it gonna go back down?
Well, I
it
think,
looks like
Kevin, the reality is that a lot of the proposals are not going to be approved because we simply can't afford them, and they'll get pushed out over time. So it's very difficult to say how long we'll have to push this stuff out, but it's not all going to be financed in 1 year. That's clear. The 8.5 million is just an unattainable goal right now.
Yeah.
right. So we'll need to arrive at what we can do as a maximum and then try to allocate it and prioritize it. So
Okay.
we have to look at safety. We have to look at the schools, what they need. We have to look at redundancy. What do we need 2 trucks to do the same thing? Can we push it one off a year, and so on? So we look at every method to stretch things out over a number of years, and we also recommend methods, alternative methods. I think the idea of regionalization is great. If we can promote more regionalization and cooperation amongst the various towns, then maybe we can reduce some of our expenses. So the fuel tank alone is for highway is 1,500,000. So we are looking at various alternatives to see maybe there's a commercial supplier that can provide fuel tanks instead of our building one. That would be the actually Cam and I, Cam, you and I worked on the truck that was hauling. They wanted $350,000 for a new truck that was hauling trash from the transfer station, and we asked that maybe they consider having it hauled by a third party or having it. Actually, Wellesley was interested in hauling it too, so they are trying that out. It seems like it's costing a lot less than spending $350,000 plus a driver that was allocated to that truck. So there are methods to reduce the capital expenditures that we recommend. And we try.
I have a question. Okay.
I think in answer to Kevin's point, though, that the reality is as the infrastructure continues to age, the capital requirements to maintain it are going to go up.
Right.
And the effect of climate change on things like culvert replacement and things like that is going to be substantial. So it seems realistic to think that our capital costs are going to be ratcheting up over time. And in terms of the way the budget manages those, having a contingency fund or whatever, a reserve fund, only works if you're trying to spread out the year-to-year variation. It's going to be hard for us to get ahead of this, given our current town finances.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. So, in terms of getting more reserves, maybe we could ask for a higher reserve amount. I don't know. That's something that I'll let Dave run with that ball.
A little gift.
I give you the hard ones.
Yeah.
Barry, at what point do you start looking for grants for items? Are you looking ahead to this, the items represented here for grants, or only once things are approved?
No, whenever anything is proposed to us, we start to look for grants. We emphasize to the departments that they should be looking. We look as well, because grants take a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So
Some
the
of the grants
past 5 years, are those real numbers, or are those numbers that were approved, or do those include grant money that may have been won?
Yeah, they are real numbers. They're actual expenditures and actual grants.
So the grant, it's the grant is folded into the number that's there for the other slide, the past 5 years.
Right.
I got it. Okay. So
Right.
Dover didn't necessarily, we spent that money, but it didn't come out of, not all of it came out of the town.
Yeah, in most, like for FY25, we actually reduced the request. So we booked $1,981,000, and we got, say, $4 million in assets. So we only booked exactly the net amount.
So we're spending more, and that's just funded with grants.
I understand.
Right. Now we talked with the school committee last night, and we asked them, because they are able, under their charter, to spend, as I think that, well, they appeared before you too, and they are able to spend some of their money on asset and maintenance. But we asked them to give us the assets from now on, so that we can put it into the calculation for fixed assets, for capital expenditures. But we will reduce the amount of expenditure by the actual expenditure by the amount that they spend out of their own coffers. But we will have a record from now on of what they're spending for capital expenditures. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to make sure.
So Mish raises a point that I've been wondering about, though, for a little bit, and that is that to a great extent, the capital budget committee is passive in this process, in that the town departments have to come to you with their requests. But
yes, to a degree.
To a degree, but if a grant were to be available for some capital purpose that might be booked out 3 or 4 years, but is now available, what's the process by which we move the capital expense up in that situation? Because it might make sense if a grant's available for us to replace a fire engine now, as opposed to in FY29, if we think we'll get assistance from the state, for example.
Yeah, we look at that. We look at that. If something is available now, we'll call it to their attention, or they'll call it to our attention. We'll actively discuss that at the time that we're doing our due diligence.
Yep.
we did, sometimes they'll have a plan, we'll recommend a change in the plan, like on the townhouse. We actually recommended doing the windows because the windows have a payback of about 20 years. The windows should last 35 years. We thought it was, and that was done several years ago, so it was at a time when capital expenditures were low. We also are saving a lot of heating and cooling expenses. So, and the building is much more comfortable for the employees. I can't tell you how many employees have come up and said the windows are our best friend at this point. So it's kind of an active back and forth with those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think the next step will be to get everybody the more accurate FY26 and projections, 5-year projections. And we expect that in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll take a look at the capital funding policy. We're a signatory to the capital funding policy along with the Warrant Committee and the Board of Selectmen. And you can see under item number 2, funding of annual capital improvement plan, it talks about the amount of the capital stabilization fund. So I think our original ask was 2.5%. I don't know. Do you remember exactly that, Cam? I know you were involved in that.
I can't quite remember, Barry, what the amount was. Dave, do you
Well, I
have
know
any?
I asked for $1 million cash to be put in the capital stabilization fund, but they used most of that money for the Carroll Community Center.
Robin will be able to wrap
Yeah.
those numbers out from her head straight away, but I'm afraid
Yeah, my apologies. I don't know the balance in the capital reserve.
Yeah, usually when we meet with the town administrator and Carl Valenti, we usually get into what the numbers will be for the reserves. So that we would probably do in mid-January. So you can see that that also has a debt management section. So capital projects that are in excess of $1 million, 10-year useful life or greater, will be considered to be use a bond for financing. So that's a new, when did we do that, Cam? About 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was 3 years ago.
Okay. So any other questions?
This has been great, Barry. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm guilty of probably having too many facts. So, because I could talk about this for the rest of the night, but some of them are just accounting kinds of things, but so I hope it was useful.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Okay, I will sign off if you don't need me.
No, we're all set. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Barry.
Good night, Barry.
Good night. Take care.
Thank you. So we just have a couple of other things, and then I'm gonna end this. Any liaison updates?
I did the planning board meeting this week. Do you want an
Sure.
update there? There, I think, so in terms of, for our purposes, they're anticipating, I guess they're asking us to placehold for 6 warrants, but it's unlikely that all 6 will be, go through the final process. Do you want to know what they are now? I'm not sure how much detail you want on this.
I think we can wait on hearing, but Carol said to me 4 to 5 probably will get through, but sounds like they have a lot on their plate.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, they're really focused on the MBTA communities law and compliance there. That's their number one focus for for the next year, obviously.
Yeah. Right, great. Any other updates?
I have one for FY 22 and it says, free cash appropriated to fund the reserve fund was 250,000.
Yeah. That's not going to get us very far.
I just wanted to give everyone an order of magnitude on what we did in 22.
Yeah. Yeah. Off by a factor of 10, probably. All right, great. So next week, we'll meet using the webinar format, assuming I don't screw it up completely. Then we're off for 2 weeks, and then the next meeting after that will be the January 8th. That will be the first meeting in which Michael, Carl, and Robin talk about the operating budget for the current the fiscal year 26. So Michael said the other day that he thought they were on track to be able to give the presentation that day. So hopefully we can really start getting a sense of how this is all going to fit together, because obviously the size of the operating budget is going to factor into how much of the capital requests we're going to be able to fund, and seems unlikely we'll be able to do all the capital requests, but hopefully we'll do a significant number of them. All right, great. So Simona, you and Kevin, you two should talk to Chris, and if things don't work out, let me know, and I'll try and go by there myself and see if I can kind of get them to really address why this isn't working.
I already dropped him a note and
Yeah,
copy
thank you,
Kevin
guys.
as well.
Yeah. And Woody, I will be absent on the 18th. I have a conflict for that night. So.
All right, no problem.
Yeah. And I guess my only other question, I guess, I know we're new here, or I'm new, and so this is, drinking from a fire hose, so to speak. But do we get to a point where it's a little bit more clear, where we say, okay, the town has this much money, and here's everything that's been requested, and we got to start horse trading? It's just very, very all over the map so far, from just, after 4 or 5 meetings, I guess, is my initial impression.
Yeah, I think that's actually precisely correct.
Okay. Okay.
In the past, the way the Warrant Committee is operated is that we had the departments come in kind of through December, January, February, and present their requests.
Yeah.
And we would look at the request and kind of deal with them, I won't say in isolation, but without a great deal of context. This year, Robin and the select board, Michael and Carl, have decided to make a major effort to, at the beginning of January, have a mock town budget, operating budget, with the idea that it's hard for us to look at the requests from the departments in the absence of the context of where the town is going. So last year, what happened is we looked at all the individual departments, and then they get put together, and the operating budget was going to be up by, I think it was 11 or 12 or so percent. And that was felt to be unrealistic. That wasn't something that we could bring to the town and expect people to pass. So the hope is that this year we'll be looking at a realistic outline, not a final outline, but a realistic outline of what the budget's going to be approaching earlier mid-January, so that when we then look at the individual department budgets, we can look at them with a greater amount of context. Whether this is going to work or not is not 100% clear to me. It seems like a much more realistic way to operate than what we've been doing kind of historically.
Yeah, no.
Um,
But when are we told how much revenues we have? Or like when does that, I mean, it seems like a lot of people are requesting a lot of money and expenditures, but when do we know how much we have to spend?
Well, the town meeting decides how much we can spend, Kevin. There isn't a number that's generated. The whole intent of this is to go to town meeting and saying, these are the requests that we have. Usually those requests that get to town meeting have been modified through discussions of the proposals, finding grants, all of that other stuff. And then we go to the town meeting as a warrant committee. We vote on every individual line item that when we vote on it, we might say we reject this proposal, and our recommendation to town meeting is that they should reject it as well. But there isn't a number that's handed down from on high because it's all run through town meeting.
and then the tax rate is set to generate what's required in terms of a tax base for the budget.
Ah, okay.
But there are constraints in the system. One of which is Prop 2.5, which I thought I'd talk about some next week.
Yeah, that's fine.
But that has a significant constraint on what the town is able to set as its target.
Right.
We're limited as a town in Massachusetts. We're limited as to how much our revenues can increase year over year because of 2.5.
Right, okay. So what are the current tax rate was like, is it 14 per thousand right now, roughly? I'm not even sure on the real estate side.
That's the number that I remember, but I would not.
So you're saying if everybody in a town votes for a whole bunch of stuff, we could come back and be like, okay, well, now the tax rate's going to be 16 per thousand to fund everything we agreed upon, as long as it doesn't go over Prop 2.5.
As long as it's within the limits of 2.5.
Okay.
And I mean, in essence, that's why we're very cautious when we go to town meeting. We want to make realistic proposals to the town, but if the town decides to spend up to that limit of the 2.5 levy, then they can do that, and basically they are accepting that their tax rate will increase as a result.
One of the procedural items we're going to have to figure out is, again, we're going to start getting close to our levy limit. And what happens if, I'm just going to pick on the pickleball courts, and all of a sudden $2 million comes in and we don't have 2 million in our levy limit.
Yeah.
So what happens?
And that's why we need to work on prioritizing the things that we think we can represent to the town meeting.
And grants, I mean, that's a good example where a grant would be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, Simone, you had brought that up originally, I think, on a recommendation, that about, look, it's possible, it was interesting to hear, in my experience on the education side of grants, without somebody who owns that, like if it's a part of everybody's job to kind of go nose around for grants, you never really can capitalize on what's being out there, versus an FTE just something to explore. One shared resource between the two towns could more than pay for itself if that's all they're doing. on behalf of all of the departments. But I don't know. It sounds like, you know, the police chief noses around, the fire chief noses around, but and if hopefully we come up with some stuff. But
They have. I just
yeah,
be assured that they really are doing this.
yeah,
And
all right.
remember, Kevin is just a few years with Dover, and Chief Vinci is what, one? So their efforts are literally new, and they're picking up steam. So
yeah,
if we could get everybody to do that, to your point, that would be even better.
yeah.
I think that would be very helpful also to communicate this better, even like to the whole community. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, like it's to your point, Kevin, like asking how much money do we have? I think that like everybody in general would expect that we have a formal budget and not kind of a perceived unlimited number that, you know, if you reach the 2.5, then we are fried.
Yeah.
To use a nice word.
We do have a budget, but it cannot be set until after the town meeting votes.
Yeah,
That's really
which is backwards, like in most of the, you know, like how you run a business, like most of the time you're going to set the budget to then decide what you're going to spend.
Right.
And now we are talking backwards. And that's my point, is like, I don't know if as a community, we have people who truly understand. And that's why we have very few people attending the town meetings, because they just think like, okay, there's a budget and nobody will increase anything because there's a budget, which is not true. And then people complain, oh, you know, they increase the taxes. I didn't, you know, like to do what? Well, you voted.
I was going to say,
or I'm saying, or you were not there to vote for.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's their choice to decide whether they want to go to a town meeting or whether they'll accept any tax increase that they get thrown at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know,
personally, I wouldn't know if I would not be here. Like, it was not clear to me.
Totally. No, some light bulbs are going off for me today. So, and has there ever been anything presented where it's just very simple, like, you know, if we approve these amount of warrants, here's how much your taxes are going to go up by, and so people are just can see very plainly, like it's going to go from 14 to 16 or 14 to 19 or whatever it is.
Look at last year's Blue Book, Kevin. You'll see it all in there.
It's in there.
Yeah, and I think the last 2 years ago, Robin made a presentation with Melissa at town meeting, in which they went through a lot of the background of the budget.
We did the same thing last year as well. And that stuff is all on the shared drive, so you can go and see exactly what that is.
All right,
but remember,
what those presentations are.
Less than 5% of the eligible people in town attend town meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the challenges I think that we need to kind of think about as a committee is how to do a better job of communicating to those people who don't have that much interest and are not engaged enough that they're able to attend town meeting.
Right.
And I think it's a huge problem for the town and for the Warrant Committee, because the getting people to accept the changes in the tax levy are going to be dependent on whether or not we can build a case adequate to persuade them this is worthwhile. Our inability to persuade people is part of why the reserve fund got turned down 2 or 3 years ago. It's hard to communicate this to people. It's hard for them to understand how paying a little extra at the beginning and putting money aside might be a benefit to them. Instead, everybody wants to spend the free cash.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you.
Woody, what's our process as a committee for considering warrant articles that aren't budgetary, that don't have a budgetary impact?
We vote on them the same way we would vote on a fiscal article.
Okay.
Or in the sense, you know, in the Blue Book, with each article, there's a notation of what the warrant committee's action on the article was, how we voted, whether it was in favor or opposed, and if it was.
Right. I didn't know if we considered them at the same, or we did that separately, or I mean, I know how it ends up in the blue book, but I didn't know.
I think I can't, I'm blanking on the dates now, but it's the last Wednesday in February, first Wednesday in March are the two long sessions where we're going to be looking at the budgets of the individual departments. The second Wednesday in March, we're supposed to address non-fiscal warrants or articles.
Speaking about the blue book, have we decided, like, are there resources identified to work on the blue book, or how are we going to do that?
Glad you brought that up. So Marty and I met with Carl and Michael a few days ago, and I told them I was having some nightmares about the blue book and preparing the blue book, and because Peter Smith was an amazing resource and had done this for a long time, and it can be a major obstacle. I think Michael and Carl agreed that they would provide a substantial amount of support for the preparation of the blue book. So I may be naive, but I'm actually sleeping better as a consequence. Hopefully, what Carl said is that a lot of the data that goes at the beginning of the blue book in the last few years had come from Carl and his office. It wasn't actually generated primarily by Peter. So I think that can make us feel a little bit better about things.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a consideration of getting Chris Costello more involved in this, and with his computer skills.
Yeah.
I remember that one of the issues was the links on the 14 tabs. If something doesn't update or gets moved, then there's a lot of links. And in any event, this would be right in Chris's wheelhouse. So hopefully there will be the requisite support you're talking about.
And the other part is the whole question of whether we should try and transition away from a paper-based document to a web-based document, and then maybe just sending out letters
PDF
to residents saying this is where it is, because the actual production costs are not insubstantive.
Well, not only that, but it is the biggest waste of paper. If you go to the post office the day that they deliver them and you look at the bins, they're literally, they have to get extra bins because all the blue books are in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the recycling department says the same thing. They all end up very quickly in the trash.
I think that this goes back to the whole point about how we educate better the community about what actually is happening at the town meeting, right? And I don't know, I think maybe we can look into, I can talk with Chris about this at one point, but like do some kind of like infographics, or I love when people can actually represent with images, like a conversation. I participate in meetings where you have actually someone, as we talk and present and so on, someone captures that almost like a cartoon. But then everybody remembers that because they have the ability to really get the essence of what needs to be known in the end. Maybe it's food for thought also as we discuss more and more.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And Cam, I'll say that you seconded it.
Okay.
Mish.
Yes.
Marty.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Nina.
Yes.
Simone.
Yes.
Janet.
Yes.
Cam.
Yes.
And I will as well. Okay, great. So those of you who are able, I'll see you next Wednesday.
And a quick apology for being late. I was actually on Cam's
Same
webinar
with
for
me.
next week. Because it
Yeah,
came in, I'm
yeah.
like, oh, great, here it is. I'm waiting patiently. And
Yep.
then I'm like,
Me
oh,
too.
that's next week's. So, sorry about that.
There's a danger to be too far ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Good
right.
night,
Have a good
everyone.
night,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you.